when you're trying to evaluate whether something occurred, you have to look at different pieces of the narrative. The location, where it happened, the witnesses, who were they, what did they say, the details. Details are very important, and time. So we start off with the location, and according to their complaint, after approximately 20 minutes, she arrived at a White House with a U-shaped driveway and a gate. There is no such location in New York, 20 minutes from Radio City. It does not exist. There is no such location. We don't know whether they created a location in order to try to get jurisdiction in New York so they could bring this case in New York, or whether they just didn't do their homework. But any New Yorker knows there is no such location. Beyond that, this was supposed to have taken place at Mr. Combs' after party, according to them. When you look at the homes associated with Mr. Combs during that period of time, and even not during that period of time, none of them matches. He had a townhouse, he had a house in the Hamptons hours away, and he had homes in New Jersey, but not at that time. None of the homes work, the location doesn't work, because this never happened. And again, when you really bear down on the location and his whereabouts, you quickly realize, because if there's photographic evidence and witnesses are coming forward, that Mr. Carter was at a commercial establishment after the VMAs. He wasn't at a house. Unfortunately for them, they needed to create this house in order to create the narrative. But he wasn't at a White House that did not exist. And this is a photograph of him at a location after the VMAs. So as we can continue through this, Jane Doe does not say that the assault happened at a commercial establishment. She can't. That wouldn't make any sense. Yet they stand by it. They double down. They triple down. White House, the White House doesn't exist. And then we get to the witnesses. And I think at the outset, everybody has to remember that in 24 years, not a single witness has ever come forward saying this happened. Quarter of a century. Think about that. She says she's at the party alone, this 13-year-old girl, and she finds herself in the room with the three most famous people at the party. Just think about how unnatural, how little common sense that makes. And according to her, one of the witnesses is a female celebrity who's just standing there watching the repetitive rape of a child. That celebrity does nothing, says nothing, reports nothing. And in fact, they won't even identify her. According to them, there's an adult female in the room watching the rape of a child. They refuse to identify her. So then we continue. And you look and there's celebrities that she says she's mingling with before. Afterwards, she says she runs out of the house naked. None of them notice that. None of them pay any notice. For 24 years, none of them has said anything. And so she's just asked in this interview, she's asked, well, I mean, celebrities are recognizable people. Surely you can tell us one celebrity that was there. Just give us one name so that we know this happened. And she says, okay, Benji Madden was there. And she wants to conjure up religion and say, I'm religious, I remember his tattoo. She looks and remembers so vividly the tattoo and the conversation with Mr. Madden. Well, Mr. Madden wasn't there. He already said he wasn't there. His tour schedule said he wasn't there. And he wasn't there because this never happened. None of this ever happened. And you keep going, and you ask yourself, well, who is this complaining witness? She does not come forward with her real name. She proceeds under Jane Doe. There's no report to the police. According to her, she never tells anybody for 24 years. Not one person, not alone in the car for 5 hours at home, on her way home. Not one person, not a diary, not a family member, not a friend. Most people, when this happens, there's a need to tell somebody. We call these prompt outcry witnesses. In most complaints like this, people tell somebody. She says nobody for 24, 25 years. And then we get to the details. And I want to make sure this is clear. When people make up an account, whether intentionally or their mind is playing tricks on them, they can always get that core part of the story right. They can just keep repeating it over and over and over again. This is what happened, that core part. But they're always going to mess up the details. When something isn't real, when something doesn't happen, you're going to get the details wrong because you weren't really there. And so she starts with her story about her friend that dropped her off. Okay? This drive of over 5 hours, the friend would have had to have gone 10 plus hours to drop her off because she's got to get there. If this is real, she's got to get there. But guess what? This friend of hers, She doesn't get out of the car, right? Think about that. She's just leaving a 13-year-old girl alone in Midtown. She doesn't even want to get out of the car. She came all that way. There can't be a witness there. She can't have a witness there because this never happened. So as you keep going, you ask yourself, but how did she end up in the car in the first place? And so she creates this story. She says, I snuck out the window, right? But now we know she came from Rochester. So she would have been sneaking out of the window at 3 in the afternoon in the middle of broad daylight. Never heard of such a thing, defies common sense, doesn't make any sense because this never happened. And so she tells this story because she's got to create a way that she gets out of the house and ends up in New York City. And as we keep going here, the friend that implausibly leaves her there, there's then some pressure on that part of the story because it doesn't make any sense. And so the lawyer is asked, well, just produce the friend. And so he has to find somebody that can make this work. And of course, as soon as he's pressed, they find somebody who they say is no longer alive. They can't corroborate it, and there's nobody to talk to. Okay, and if we could keep going. Next slide. So she then gets there, right? And she has this vivid tale of watching it on a Jumbotron. It's in her complaint. Clear as day. There was no Jumbotron that year. Okay? I don't know whether they were Googling images and found the wrong year. I don't know whether she's just making it up out of whole cloth. There is no Jumbotron. In fact, they didn't even get a permit, according to the police and the city, for the Jumbotron that year. So that didn't happen. None of the details are right because this never happened.